content in the realms of art, history, science, and achievement, and providing them for you digitally. And this is part of an amazing process because I get to kind of interview some of my favorite people, favorite artists, and favorite individuals in the community and beyond. And tonight, very special for us, we, in celebration of an upcoming exhibition, and yes, that exhibition is upcoming, Ken Hoffman, 50 years in Peoria, we have some guests with us to talk with someone very special who is part of that show. But first, let me introduce Mary and Andrew Muir, who are sponsors of this exhibition. And we're so happy that they can join us tonight. Mary, Andrew, how are you this evening?
Wonderful. Doing great. Thanks, Bill.
Wonderful.
You bet. And from Peoria Riverfront Museum, our curator of art, Zach Zetterberg, is with us also tonight from the offices of Peoria Riverfront Museum. How are you, Zach?
Doing great, Bill. Hi, Mary and Andrew.
Hi, Zach.
And the man of the hour, or however long we go, is the featured artist, of course, Ken Hoffman. How are you this evening? Thanks for being with us.
Doing great, Billy.
Everyone looks so impressive. This is going to be fun. And I actually have known Ken for a long time, as have Mary and Andrew, I believe. So we have a lot to talk about. Before we get in deep, I want to make sure and thank all of our members of the museum, all of our Visionary Society members who, without your support, without your gracious contributions, we could not do this. So please, thank you, and please keep enjoying the content that we're putting out there. Also, I want to mention, and I'll mention this again at the end, Peoria Riverfront Museum actually, everyone knows, I suppose, who's been here, that we have a pretty amazing store, gift store, bookstore in the museum. And we have a number of Ken Hoffman works in our store right now, which you could access online if you go to our website. I believe you can even purchase items from Ken. I'm not exactly sure what we have, Ken, but I think it's an amazing thing that you're providing for us. So thank you for doing that. Ken's show will go up on Memorial Day. I want everyone to know that. As soon as we let people in the doors, you'll be able to see that show. If we cannot let you in on Memorial Day, I will provide a tour, maybe with Ken. Maybe Ken will walk around with me. I have to talk to him about that and get him to agree. But we will provide that show digitally until we can open the doors. So very excited to have that show, of course. And lastly, anyone out there, please send questions if you would like anything addressed from Ken, and we will try to address those. I think we'll have somebody in the office kind of feed those questions to us. If we're a little behind, stay tuned. We will get to them. So please feel free to ask anything. So let's get into it. Ken Hoffman, I am going to share my screen real quick. So bear with me for a second as I get a little slideshow up and running here. Everyone see me there?
Yep, got it, Bill.
This is, first of all, it's an amazing painting that perhaps someone in our group here knows something about. Tell us about the puppy that we're looking at first.
Do you want us to?
I think that's you, Ken.
The puppy. The puppy was based on Chuck Norris. I think he favors Chuck Norris, or Chuck Norris favors him. And I haven't seen this painting for a long time, and I've been looking at it, and the right eye is setting back in his skull. I never knew that I was aware of how that eye goes back in there.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know what to think about it now. Maybe a little disturbing or good or bad or whatever, but I like it. I like this painting. I like working on this painting. I saw a lot of Chuck Norris movies, read Chuck Norris's book, and the size gave me some room to really move around and do a lot of mark making.
It's a beautiful painting, Ken. I also love the way the eye disturbs the symmetry. And
Yeah.
I love your titles. First of all, Ken's titles are always very playful, and often they refer to pop culture and various people, actors, musicians, et cetera, et cetera. So I always like the little backstories behind your works. I wanted to mention, Ken, one of the first things I see is that your sister Susan is watching. So I wanted to make sure you knew that.
Oh, wonderful.
So let's move along. I want to talk about your past briefly. And we're really here to celebrate you in Peoria, but Ken Hoffman was not born in Peoria. Ken Hoffman is from Texas, who comes to Peoria by way of San Francisco. Is that fair, Ken?
Good. That's fair.
And you attended the San Francisco Art Institute in the 60s. And
Yeah.
We had a discussion about the work of yours, which is here in the center. I'm kind of moving my mouse around here, if you can see it, the cursor, which is Ken Hoffman. But what I've surrounded this painting with is an amazing little kind of array of two artists' work who were very important in the San Francisco art scene, which cannot be understated in terms of how important the West Coast was in shaping American art. They were responding to some of the things going on in the East Coast and New York, of course, and a vibrant, fruitful, and just an amazing time to be in San Francisco. The image up here in the middle, Ken, is actually a little jazz band that Elmer Bischoff, who's on the right here, is playing trumpet for. That's him there. And David Parks on the left is playing piano.
Yeah.
So the reason I included this is I wanted to, and I know you well enough, the scene in San Francisco, would you please elaborate on it? But this is a kind of collusion of many different energies, right? Creative energies in terms of poetry, music, and painting, art, sculpture, etc. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, the top three images, Elmer and the band and David Park, that all happened before I got there. I didn't get to the Art Institute until 1964. Guys were already like 60, 61. David Park died, I think, in 61. I really was looking forward to studying with him. Elmer Bischoff, I got to talk to and spend part of an evening with. He also conducted a critique on one of my paintings in the MFA program. It was a huge painting about 10 feet by 6 feet, and he gave me a really beautiful critique. He's at that time he was very elaborate. He dressed really elaborate. He was wearing motorcycle shoes, motorcycle pants. He had a black scarf wrapped around his neck, and he was standing in front of my painting, and he was talking about curvilinear farms, curvilinear farms, curvilinear farms. And at one point he took his scarf and he whipped it around his neck. And I thought, what is going on with this guy? What is happening here? He was very animated, very animated man, and very, very brilliant. Is that enough?
That's wonderful, and absolutely, Ken. I was remiss in saying these these are two of many of the individuals who kind of set the stage that you walked into by the time you got to San Francisco. And the predominance or the focus on the figure, I think, is really fascinating. Many of these painters ended up becoming abstractionists, but the investigation of the portrait, which I love how yours situates in with their work, I just thought was amazing. Then as we move along, Ken, there's a kind of a big deal exhibition that happens in San Francisco. You are at the San Francisco Art Institute, which I'm happy to say is going to resume classes in the fall. There was some information that they would close. They're not going to. They're remaining open, which is very exciting. This exhibition, Funk, was curated by Peter Sells, right, at University of California, Berkeley, 1967. Do you have any input on the works of the Funk kind of era, the thoughts that were going on at the time? And
Yes, I do, Billy. The image on the top right, that was done by Robert Hudson.
Correct. Right.
I studied with Robert Hudson probably about a year. He was really, I mean, he was really one cool dude. He's really laid back, and I loved his work. Made a piece out of plaster. It was like a giant chicken that had fallen over on its side. And I had painted on it, and Bob was very excited about it. The thing at the Art Institute was to get your work into the courtyard. That was a big moment for the artists. And, he says, Ken, I'm going to get this piece out in the courtyard. He said, this needs to be seen. It needs to be seen by people. He never got that piece out in the courtyard. The abstract expressionists jumped all over him.
Oh my gosh.
He said, no, that's not Ken. You misled him into some other world of whatever, funk. And they got into a real intense discussion over my piece of art. So it never made it. It never got to the courtyard like Leo Castelli, if you got it.
Unbelievable.
And Bob Hudson was a tremendous influence. I loved him. The first day of class, he comes in and he says, okay, I want everybody to make 5 shapes, 5 images. And he gave us 5 little pieces of clay. So I made these kind of little cubist looking little things. And he's going around looking at people's work. And he came up to my table, my stand, and he's walking around and he's looking, and he's not saying anything. He's walking around. And finally he comes over to me and he said, these are the most insane things I have ever seen in my life. And that really stuck with me for some reason.
Wow. That's amazing. And Ken, the work of that time, I mean, the whole funk movement, I think, is important to you because of the playfulness, the scale, which anyone who knows Ken Hoffman and his work knows that scale is an important, not just large, but how the size of a piece kind of integrates with your body, with the size of you. And they're sensuous. They're ugly, they're vulgar, they can be offensive, they can be playful, they can be frivolous. There's so many things that they're exploring here that really end up coming to Chicago, and we're not going to go into a whole funk lecture, but a lot of this stuff ends up percolating in the Midwest, which is, I think, super interesting because you are here also. So is there anything else you wanted to add before I move along?
No.
Okay. I want to get the Muirs involved here and talk about a work that I had the pleasure of seeing about 6 to 8 months ago. And Andrew or Mary, you care to maybe take over here?
You go.
Sure.
first. And I'm gonna say something.
On the back is signed 1970. So this is a picture of 8 feet of the 16 feet that the painting is. Only have a wall big enough to put half the painting up, but this is at our office on Main Street. And I grew up with this painting, seen it all my life. It is phenomenal to see in person. There is a lot of fluorescent, there is a lot of collage, there is an awful lot to this painting. And I call it bottles. I don't know if that's right or not, but it's an amazing painting, and especially amazing for 1970 because it's still relevant today. And the other neat thing about this is it's from the time period when my father was friends with a lot of Bradley professors in the early 70s that were teaching at the Peoria building, the old art building at Bradley. And there was such a great group of people that were involved in teaching and that were hanging out together in the early 70s. And it was a great experience to be around all of them and to go to Ken's studio downtown and just to be involved in that art scene at a young age really was a great influence on me. So thank you, Ken.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add when Andrew and I started dating, and this is like 35 years ago, and we went to his dad's condo, and Andrew's dad had this on his living room wall, and it was just huge, and it was bigger than life, and I'd never seen anything like it in my entire life. I'd only seen, old masters and that kind of crap. And so when I saw this, it just blew my mind open. What is this? It's amazing. It's saturated. There's color, there's words, there's collage. It just captivated me, and it's still my absolute favorite piece in the whole world, bar none. And it's the same with my children, our 3 girls. It is the most favorite piece because it's just such a work of art, and it's such a work of love. And when you see it in person, it just blows you away. It just blows your mind because it's so special. That's what it is. It's just the most special piece. And so, Ken, I thank you for opening my eyes up to contemporary art and to a whole new world of art for me.
That's great. That's great.
That's great.
And really what we're seeing here, Ken, is, and I don't know, 1970, you're brand new in Peoria. What I want to make sure our audience or really anybody who studies Ken Hoffman understands is in 1970, some of this stuff is still on the cutting edge of being explored. The collage, the words. I'm going to advance the slide, but we're not done talking about this piece. We're going to keep talking about it. In San Francisco's Museum of Modern Art, there exists one of actually many Robert Rauschenbergs, but this particular piece reminded me so much of your approach in terms of there's an all over quality. Of course, it goes off the edges of all 4 sides of the piece. The playfulness of material, the playfulness of color, and yet there is a compartmentalization, a grid, right, that's in here. I'm going to keep advancing, but look at this. I mean, this is an amazing kind of playful use of color that holds up. Who would have thought 50 years later this newspaper looks this good? Truly incredible. At the same time, we have, this is from our friends at Crystal Bridges in Bentonville, Arkansas, Alphabets by Jasper Johns, of course, 1960. You're responding to some of this vernacular that's being played out in the art world on the East Coast, and it's coming over to the West Coast with the stenciling and the use of language. So do you have any, feel free to jump in if there's anything you'd like to say, Ken, or I can keep going.
That collage, that painting that they have.
Yes.
I didn't know who in the hell Jasper Johns was.
That's
I never looked at this other guy on the left. I wasn't very familiar with Robert Rauschenberg. And my main man, the person I was really feeding off of that time was Picasso.
interesting.
I really examined his work, especially what he did with those bottles. Like he would tip them forward, he would tip them back, he would make them small, he would make them large. Look how big Club is. It's like it's just booming out of that space.
Right.
Things start to move in a different way. Tonight, I noticed this huge black slash
Yes.
in from the top. Yeah. And I don't know why the hell I did that. I don't know. I don't know. I just worked on this thing. I really had fun with it. There's some pyramid shapes, little hard edge shapes down in there. I enjoyed cutting up all these magazines that advertised Cutty Sark, different brands, Chanel perfume, and it's packed.
It is.
Get this painting out. It is just packed in there. There is no breathing room. There's no what they call it, a breathing space. And I wanted it like that. The more I worked on it, the more it got filled up. So.
That's great. That's great. And just to be clear, Ken, those references that I'm putting in there, I am not necessarily saying that you are pulling imagery from those people, but really more so making a case for what's in the air at the time, some of the things that are being explored. And so this is the last one I'm going to put in. And what we have here is a comparison with the same detail from that painting that the Muir Zone, and an early Andy Warhol illustration with the Chanel bottle here. So Zach Zetterberg, we've got some people asking for you to get involved here.
Sure. Yeah.
Tell me about.
Great job. You're answering every question that I was going to ask. I would just like to clarify. So you left San Francisco in 1969 to come to Peoria. Is that correct?
I left the Art Institute in 1968. I spent 1 year in Spokane. That was my first teaching assignment. And then I came to Peoria.
Interesting. So I remember a painting that was in Emergence that had Spokane in the Piranha.
Oh yeah.
It was a great painting.
Yeah.
So I guess I would love to know more about who you're hanging out with and what the vibe is. 1969 in San Francisco, that must have been probably the greatest time period for an artist to be in San Francisco. Can you speak about that a little bit more?
Let's see. Where can I start here? It was intense. The whole thing was intense. The music, the art, the drinking, the dope, the whole thing. It was just like everything was in motion. You're like on a roller coaster. We used to hang out at a place called the Harringtons after graduate meetings, graduate critique meetings, and that's where it really got going. That's where a lot of, you picked up a lot of stuff because Elmer Bischoff was there, Frank Lobdell was there, Alvin Light was there, Jerry Atowski was there. And Harrington's for several years was a major watering hole for the artists and other people that came there. It was, I was sitting there one night having a drink with those guys, and they could drink me under the table. But there was a woman sitting next to me. I don't know who she was. I don't know if she was a sculptor, a painter, or something. And she was drinking, and she looks up at me and she says, "I don't like the way you look." I said, "Well, who are you, lady?" And she said, "Well, I teach at the Art Institute, and I don't like the way you look." And I said, "Okay." I didn't want to get in a fight with her, but a lot of fights did break out at Harrington's. They argued over a lot about art things, of course. People would get into fights. It reminded me so much of the Cedar Bar in New York City with Pollock and that group. And one night I was there, and some guy hit another guy in the head with a beer bottle. He didn't like his painting, and it was exciting, man.
It's exciting.
I'm glad I was there. I'm so glad I was part of that.
I think Mary described it really well when she was describing your painting as being an explosion.
That's good. That's good, Mary.
Thank you.
I'm pushing us forward here, and this is the last. This is the last bit of this is your life, Ken Hoffman. But first, there was a question about the mural piece that the Muirs owned. That work will be in the exhibition. So
wonderful.
That was a question that was asked, so I want to make sure that people understand. Not everything we're going to look at here is in the exhibition, but that work is going to be, it's an absolutely liftoff point for Ken, particularly in Peoria. And so we have some, these are all also older works, right, Ken? About what year are we looking at here? We have Bob Dylan, I know.
Bob Dylan was done right after I got to Peoria, 1970, 71. The Hitler drawing was done at the same time. The Japanese aviator attacking Pearl Harbor was done at the same time. And this little piece with the two men and the bird.
Yeah.
Can you zoom it? Can you zoom it?
I'm sorry, I cannot. I am sorry, I can't.
Okay.
I just, not because I don't want to, I just can't.
Okay.
But it's a great piece. And I know that some of these animals, Ken, they really prefigure where you end up going. This guy here looks like one of your vultures, and this guy with the, the profile of the bird ends up, of course, becoming something that you work very laboriously with, and the great fish here. Very much, it looks like very much about some of the popular cultural things that were in the air at the time that you were responding to, but also pretty fearless, like you're taking on, as times were in the 60s, pretty fearless in terms of taking on the establishment's various kind of concepts that were pretty big. It was just, I thought that I actually took this photograph in your studio, and I just wanted to share that. But as we move forward, there's Ken in the studio, and this is a great old Journal Star photo, expose on Ken back in 1975, when you are kind of focusing on the female form. And I loved how this is on the right side, a contemporary shot in your studio. And I see these beautiful portraits here that are so reminiscent of, of this piece. So we're moving into portraiture, and I thought this would be a good time for you to talk about why you make that move.
I don't understand why I made that move.
Why did you move
Where are
toward the portrait, just the portrait only, rather than some of the bigger kind of voluminous images that you had? So if I go back a slide, Bob is a little portrait-like. You're kind of starting with Bob here. And then you make, somewhere along the line, you decide that these close-ups of the face,
I've worked a lot with the figure. The Merkel building, there was two of us that would bring the model down every Saturday. We'd draw from the model, the figure, and
yeah.
I got hold of these magazines, popular magazines, Vogue, Bazaar, and somehow I tired doing the whole malarkey with the full figure, and I want to concentrate on just the portrait. What's going to happen? I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what these were going to look like. I just started out. You can see me on the table there, contemplating where in the hell do I go from here.
Sure.
And so they just kept going. They kept going, and I just went with it. Those other ones you had up, shot on the wall, those were done down in Florida from the live model. I love drawing the head. I'm obsessed with the head. So as you know, Billy, that's this monkey man with the safety goggles, that's in your collection.
It is in my collection. That's why it's in here, kid. Exactly.
Oh.
Ken, when did you start using the animal head in these portraits?
Okay. The animals came out of the big murals I was working on. I did 5 years, 5 big murals, 6 by 40 feet. And they took me a year to complete. And I was packing everything in there. People, animals, flowers, beer bottles, everything. And I got tired. I got exhausted. I got burned out with those big murals. And I thought, well, let's see, what can we do? I want to work smaller. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. What do we got here? And the first thing I did was a little portrait of a pig that was in one of the big murals. I did the portrait of the pig. Hey, man, it took off,
Can I interject and ask the mirrors, because I see a portrait work behind you. I see one of the cardinals, and I know Frog is back there. Frogman's back there too. Could you tell us what the portraits do in terms of a viewing experience for someone who collects Ken? What do those paintings do for you?
You go.
Well, I will tell you what Ken does for me. I connect with Ken's animals in a way that, like with Puppy Man, we have Puppy Man, Chuck Norris. And as soon as we walked up with Art Guild for that show, and we saw Puppy Man, I looked at Andrew and I said, I hadn't seen anything else. I said, I gotta have this. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen since bottles. And so I said, this just blows me away.
It's great.
And every day I get to look at Puppy Man and he brings me joy. But the cardinals, we have several cardinals, and because the cardinals have a really special place in my heart because my dad passed about 15 years ago, and the cardinal was his favorite bird. But I see cardinals like every day, and I always think they're my father. It's a little crazy,
Hmm.
but I see my Ken cardinals all over I have little baby Ken cardinals, little tiny ones that he did with when he mixed with the sand and the glitter. And I have all different kinds. I have collage ones, but and I just connect with all of them every day. I connect.
I really love how soft and maybe not so explosive that those bird paintings are. It's
Yes,
definitely
yes. And
something
then there's
totally different.
where's the little guy? What we do with the little guy? Here he is. Here's well, he's not a cardinal, but he's a blackbird. But he's one of Ken's with the glitter and the sand.
That little bird.
And we have him right at our front door underneath this little Amish bench just right above it. And he's a blackbird, but he has the cardinal aesthetic to him. And I don't know. We love, in fact, we give them to our girls too. Our girls all collect Ken because we love his work so much and we love Ken so much. It's just it's a double play because our girls got to work with Ken at Lakeview Museum when they were young, and they got to do pottery with Ken. And it was just an unbelievable class that they did with him. And we just all forever love Ken in this house. And Barbie. Good Barbie.
So playing off of those small ones, the little intimate ones that you just shared with us, I'm going to present a slide that is a little bit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
God, I've never seen these.
Which are some great, obviously in process shots at the top, and then the finished works. Most of the entirety of the finished works are at the bottom. They're a little bit cropped. I apologize, but you get the idea. Andrew, you responded to the large, the piece that you own, the mural section. Do you respond to the large works any differently than the small ones? Do they tell us about how you kind of enter these?
The large ones like this and Mared, Ratman, others that I've seen, they're a lot to take in. They are really powerful pieces, and they have a completely different feel to me than the Bottles does. But there is so much to these works. There are words, there are logos, there are symbols that Ken has put in. They're really a mosaic, just incredible. You really have to sit and study them for quite a bit of time. There's a lot to them. Yeah, you see something new every time. So
absolutely. And the intensity of that, the animal in the suit, the suit isn't always the clothing. Sometimes there are other accoutrements that they wear over the years, brassieres and various other things. They're not always men. But this idea that somehow that there's an intersection with what we would, I guess, term an animal and the person or the human, asks so many questions about, are we the animal, or is the animal the person? This reflects the reflexive nature of the subject. I think it's amazing. And Ken, you have just kind of landed into this and just plowed through. How many years do you think you used, particularly the animal portrait? How many years do you think that went on, or has gone on, really?
Oh, Bill, I'm not sure. A long time, several years, 20, 25, 30, 35. I don't know. I've lost count. I've done they've just been a continual, like one feeds the other one. While I'm finishing the pig man, I'm already thinking about that grizzly bear. And then when I'm doing the grizzly bear, I'm thinking about another painting. It's like Barb told me one night, it's like we're at Chicago O'Hare and there's these planes coming into land. That's like paintings coming into land because you've got them stacked up out there in your mind. The grizzly bear the idea was given to me from a student. I had a show down in Springfield. I can't remember. Lincoln Land College. I had a little reception and a show. I had about 10 paintings down there. And this student comes up and he says, I think you ought to do a grizzly bear. And I said, done a grizzly bear? I said, no, man, I wouldn't know how to do a grizzly bear. Oh, you got to do a grizzly bear. That's the thing, man. That's where it's at. I said, okay. And I thought about that and I thought about it. And I found a really great photo. And I started sketching this thing in. I didn't know if it was going to work or not. And I got deeper into it. And I also looked at a lot of photos of Clement Greenberg. That's who Clement Greenberg looks like. He looks like a goddamn grizzly bear. And that kind of, I read things about him, looked at pictures, I looked at the grizzly, I looked at Clem, and I kind of came up with this. And I've noticed, and other artists have talked about it, the horizon line, the perspective line, it's like you're down lower, like you're on the floor looking up at this painting. Mm-hmm. Had never really been aware of that before until some of the artists started talking about it.
Ken, I got a quick question for you.
Man.
Can you just kind of describe what the studio is like for you? Are you working on big paintings and small paintings at the same time? What's going on?
You mean right now?
I guess you could say like, an average day in the studio. Are you working on more than one thing?
No.
A lot of stuff going on.
I must have 25, 35 paintings going right now. Big ones, little ones, tiny ones. I'm working on stuff I'm finding washed up in the river. I'm bringing that home. I find stuff in the parking lots. I found somebody threw some tennis shoes away outside the FedEx office. I took those back to the studio and now they're nailed into the painting.
That's great.
I'll use everything and anything.
Oh my God.
Here's the Spokane painting.
Oh, I love that. Wow.
This one was, Zach, this was in the Peoria Riverfront Museum, 3 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Zach, did you curate this this piece into the exhibition? Was this a selection from you, or?
I just told Ken to give us his best.
Oh, there it is.
Give us the best. All right.
So, again, the playful nature, all these collage digits, these fingers, and the billboard paper that you've used over the years, Ken. It looks like this, it's happening during this painting, I'm sure, but I think there's a point where you start, you mentioned shoes. You're attaching, these various decoupage collage elements onto the piece, and they're growing. And I don't know if this piece particularly has them, but you start adding things that are not necessarily paper
Sharpie.
not necessarily canvas. They're not necessarily flat. You start adding all sorts of things in there. And I just think this image it really shows the labor that you put into these. I mean, how long does it take you to complete, say, a painting like this, which looks to be about 6 feet by 6 feet or so?
This was 8 feet square, 7 feet square. This painting probably took me, I don't know, Billy, 6, 7 months to finish it, 8 months.
And you are kind of continually working many paintings, coming back to it, leaving it, coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just love the image of that because, all these paintings that you're working on at the same time are really informing each other. It's not just you and a piece of work. They're all working in this symphony that you kind of bounce around in. This is starting to get, I mean, you see the color starting to get, again, that vibrancy, like the pig, the fluorescent color. You start to put in fluorescent color, which I think was even in the mirrors, the panel, the mural section. Was it not? Did you have fluorescent paint in that? Do you recall? That was a long time ago. You may not remember.
Yeah,
There's
fluorescent stenciling and fluorescent colors.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just phenomenal. Everybody needs to. Everybody
You gotta come see it.
Oh,
it'll blow your socks off. It's so amazing. It moves you.
As Ken has moved forward in his work, I have a question. I want to ask a question real fast. I just noticed. Kurt asks, by any chance, was Mayor Richard Daley an inspiration for the Grizzly painting?
Oh my God, that's great.
Kurt Robondo.
That's so great.
Robondo.
So maybe the answer to that is already implied, huh? And Sarah asks, have you ever painted a man kissing a fish?
Oh, that's Kurt. That's Kurt. I have not painted a man kissing a fish.
Okay. Let's set the record straight once and for all. Your new work, Ken, I want to jump into this work that you're exploring. You're a continual innovator in the studio, and I want to show some images of what you're up to these days. And I think a lot of people think of Ken Hoffman as the guy who paints animals in suits, which you indeed are. But there are dimensions to your work that expand in various kind of outward ways from that spoke. So here are a couple amazing little playful things that are fairly new, right? Can you talk about these a little?
The one on the left is the back of a plastic chair that I found in the river on a fishing trip. I drug it to the studio. And God, I just love the shape of it. What a challenge. What the hell am I going to put on this thing? But this cat started to come in. It was small, then it got larger. I repainted it several times. And then put those huge eyes in there. And then the nose was cut out of some Dayglow paper, of course. And then I got the lips out of Vogue magazine. That's in there. And it's really new for me. Got to find more chairs floating around in the Illinois River. And anyway, the one on the right, I'm still working on it. I'm not sure. I really enjoyed just buying a picture like Julian Schnabel. found this in a thrift store, and I'm gonna just paint over it with some kind of funky little landscape or something. I just painted over it with this bottle study.
Sure.
There's a little lizard in there, and I haven't thought of a name yet for to go on the label. But I'm working on the outside of that frame. Should it be paper? Should it be smooth, like over on the left?
Right.
I don't know.
It's really interesting how the painting on the right is sort of circled back to Picasso and the Bottles mural at the Muir Zone.
Yes.
Very nice.
Very cool.
Very good. I like it.
So there are some amazing
Oh,
correlations with paint things. And Ken, we're closing in on we're getting close to kind of cinching this up, but there are times where you paint on the things, and then there are times where it appears you're leaving them, or at least for the moment, you're leaving their found color, you're leaving their distressed condition as part of the painting, almost like a ready-made or a found artwork that you are inserting into the piece. Will this thong here, this little Fila thong, will that get painted over, or are you using that for color?
No, I think that's going to stay there, Billy. I like where it's at. I like just the rawness of the shoe. Where did I find that? In a parking lot somewhere. And then I'm going to move the little girls, that yellow shoe at the top. I don't like it up there. I'm going to move it down, put it on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that'll work better. But this is really raw. You're showing some really raw work.
Unfinished.
Just searching.
Yeah, which you continually do.
Yeah.
And then I have one last slide here that I want to, as Zach Zetterberg so presciently surmised. And this slide is the Muir's on top of a new piece that's in process, and that bottle and those bottles are just, you could marry them together.
You think so?
But I love that this is 50 years of searching out content in various areas, Ken, and I think that the exploratory nature of your work is really what we want to make sure that the exhibition talks about. Everyone loves the animals in the suits, we all do, but you as an artist are pushing in so many directions. I don't know if anyone in the group here wants to add or anything that we haven't said.
No. Well, I do, because I think I cannot believe this new painting you're doing. It is marvelous. And the painting that we just saw with the shoes was the flower. Was it an amaryllis? What was it? A Christmas flower? And then I have one more before that.
Great.
Before that, with the cat in the chair. Was that a quarantine kitty? Because I felt like it was a quarantine kitty.
That's wonderful. Yay. Wonderful.
It's beautiful.
But I'm in love with your new bottles, I must say. And I'm in love with all of your work. And you know, the one thing about your animals that I think people take from is because you know how Rene Magritte would make the man in the suit with the hat and the apple. And it was such a flippant sort
Whimsical.
of what?
Whimsical.
But whimsical, yes, whimsical. But I also felt sort of stoic. You know, there wasn't any emotion to me. And your animals are pure emotion, like the grizzly bear. My God, you know, you look at him and you're like, yes, holy Jesus, I know this person. I know this person, you know? And
Right.
and it's the same with Puppy Man. You know him, and Puppy Man has really the dearest eyes. Our Chinese Shar Pei Jolene has the same sweet human eye. And, and I feel that because you humanize your animals so much that I don't know, they become a part of your family and your soul. And once again, I'm just gonna say, you know, Ken, we love you. And we've known you, but we've known you, well, Andrew's known you forever, but I have known probably what, almost 40 years. And we love you and Barbie. And we love the brightness and the light that you have brought into our lives and our girls, our children's lives, and teaching them about art, which is, I think, the most important thing. You know, they had you in art at Lakeview, they had you in art at ICC, and that was the most amazing experience for Jay and Isabel. It just blew them away because you are really a one in a million artist where you are able to not only just create, but to teach. And to teach that art, it's a gift from God. It just is. It's a gift from God to be able to teach that to children and to light them on fire to create that art. Really, I'm going to get verklempt here and start crying.
Thank you, Mary. Ken, I have two
Thanks,
questions.
Mary. Thanks.
Ken, I have two
Beautiful.
questions for you. Sarah asks if your lovely wife, Barb Hoffman, if your lovely wife's work influences your work, and if so, how?
Wow, that's a good question. It's a good question.
Yes. I think we share a lot with each other. We critique our work. We sometimes we take little parts out of each other's stuff and use it, try to use it. Yeah, it's a great sharing art relationship where we're just totally immersed in it, reading, looking, videos. We love it.
Great. That's great. And there is a question on whether we will have a publication for your exhibition. And the answer is, as of right now,
No.
undetermined. Undetermined.
Oh, undetermined.
We would probably pursue that in our kind of strange times that we're all living in here. We will certainly examine whether that's a possibility. The questions are still coming in, Ken, so you're just going to have to hang on a minute.
Oh, good.
What is going on?
I might have.
Peggy is asking, you seem to be drawn to glitz, glam, and formal attire. Can you tell us why you're drawn to those elements?
Glitz, glam, and
Formal attire. Yeah.
Well, she must be. Who is this?
This is Peggy West.
Peggy West. Oh, okay. Hi, Peggy. I went to a series of putting the animals in tuxedos. I got on a tuxedo kick, and everybody was wearing a tuxedo for probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I'm not using that. I'm not using the tuxedo anymore. However, seeing Andrew today in that wonderful attire, I may go paint Andrew in a tuxedo.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. All right. Well, guess what? We are at an hour. We have done an hour, if you can believe it.
Wow.
It seems to have been 5 minutes, but it was absolutely so much fun to explore with you, Ken. And I want to thank you for doing this for us. I want to thank you for doing the exhibition with us. I, of course, want to thank Mary and Andrew Muir for making this exhibition possible and for your amazing contribution tonight. Would either of you like to say anything before we go? Andrew or?
No, Bill, thank you so much for walking us through this art and helping us understand.
And I just want to say it was fascinating to see Ken's early work, which I just adore. The self-portrait of you, Ken, was so Joe cool. I need to have them. They're just, it's amazing. And to see bottles, which is what we call, with your new piece, it just blows me away. And you always just blown us away, Ken. You are an icon, a living legend, and we love you.
Zach, any last words for us?
I just want to say thank you, Ken. Thank you, Muirs, for making this possible here at the museum. I can't wait to install the exhibit, and it's going to be great. Well,
what a night. Thank you very much. I want to make sure that to plug our next viewing room live, which will actually be in a week. 1 week from now, we'll bring Bill Heydrich and Sarah Zalek back to talk about Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi painting, which of course is one of the most mysterious because it's the most recently attributed paintings to Da Vinci. It also happened to break many records in terms of the amount of money that it sold for, $450 million. So we're going to explore that a little bit. I want to thank members of the museum, Visionary Society members. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. And remember, Ken Hoffman items are in our store right now. So go online and check them out. And everybody, thank you for being a part of this. And everyone who watched, thanks so much. Keep the party going.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Love you, Barbie.